Ryan adjusted the strap of his duffel bag as he stepped off the bus, his heart pounding with anticipation. The cool evening air brushed against his face, but he barely noticed. After over a year of deployment overseas, he was finally home. Home to his wife Emily, the woman who had promised to wait for him, the woman he had missed every single day. He gripped the small velvet box in his pocket and glanced down at the bouquet of white lilies in his other hand. Emily's favorite. A little surprise for the love of his life. His early return wasn't planned. The mission had ended sooner than expected, and instead of waiting for the official homecoming ceremony, Ryan had jumped at the first flight back. He hadn't even told Emily. He wanted to see the look of pure joy on her face when she saw him standing at the door. As the taxi pulled up to their small suburban home, Ryan smiled, picturing Emily curled up on the couch, maybe watching one of those romantic dramas she loved. She'd probably be wearing his old army hoodie, the one she always said still smelled like him. He could already hear her gasp of surprise, feel the warmth of her arms around him. But as he stepped out of the car and onto the driveway, something gnawed at him. An unease he couldn't quite place. The porch light was off, which was strange. Emily always left it on for him, even when he was away. The house, usually welcoming, felt different. Ryan shook off the feeling and took a deep breath. Maybe she had fallen asleep early. Maybe she had gone out for groceries, or maybe. No, he pushed the doubt aside. He was just overthinking. Adjusting his grip on the flowers, he walked up to the front door and turned the handle. It was unlocked. Another strange thing. Emily always locked up at night. Ryan's excitement wavered, replaced by a creeping sense of unease. Something about the house didn't feel right. And in the next few moments, he would find out why. Ryan stepped inside, his boots barely making a sound against the hardwood floor. The house was dimly lit, the air thick with an unfamiliar silence. He expected to hear the hum of the television or the soft sound of Emily's voice humming a tune. Instead, he heard something else, a sound that didn't belong. Muffled noises, soft laughter, the rustling of sheets. Ryan froze. His grip tightened around the bouquet, his pulse hammering against his ribs. For a moment, he stood there, unable to move, his mind trying to reject what his ears were telling him. Maybe the TV was on in the bedroom. Maybe Emily had fallen asleep with a movie playing. But deep down, he knew better. Each step toward the bedroom felt heavier, his breath shallow as he moved through the hallway. His stomach twisted into a painful knot, his body tensing as the noises became clearer. Voices, one of them Emily's, the other, a man's. His heartbeat roared in his ears. The warmth of excitement he had felt just moments ago was gone, replaced by something cold and hollow. He reached the bedroom door. It was slightly ajar. Through the narrow gap, he caught glimpses of movement, shadows shifting against the dim glow of the bedside lamp. Ryan's fingers curled around the doorknob. He wasn't sure what he expected to see, but the truth had already begun sinking into his bones, weighing him down like lead. With a deep breath, he pushed the door open. And then, time stopped. The bouquet slipped from his fingers, the flowers landing soundlessly on the floor. There, tangled in the sheets, was Emily, his Emily. And she wasn't alone. The man beside her turned, his face going pale as recognition set in. Ryan's chest tightened, his breath catching in his throat. It wasn't just any man, it was Jason, his best friend. A sharp, searing pain tore through Ryan's heart, leaving him numb. Disbelief. Shock. A betrayal so deep it felt like the ground had been ripped from beneath him. Emily gasped, her eyes widening in sheer horror as she scrambled to cover herself. Ryan, her voice trembled, but he barely heard it. The walls of the home he had longed to return to now felt suffocating. The place that once held love and laughter now echoed with nothing but his shattered trust. Ryan clenched his fists, his vision blurring. He had imagined this moment 1,000 times. But never like this. Never like this. Ryan stood in the doorway, his breath coming in sharp, uneven gasps. His mind screamed at him to move, to say something, to react, but he was frozen. The scene before him burned into his memory, every detail etched into his mind like a scar that would never fade. Emily's tangled hair, the sheets twisted around her body, the dim glow of the bedside lamp casting shadows over her guilty, panic-stricken face. And Jason, his best friend, the man he trusted like a brother, the man who had stood beside him through war, through sleepless nights in the desert, through everything. Now that same man sat there, his bare chest rising and falling rapidly, his face pale with shock. Ryan's stomach twisted violently. He felt like he might be sick. "Ryan." Emily's voice was barely above a whisper, filled with guilt and fear. She clutched the sheets to her chest, as if that could somehow undo the damage. I thought you weren't coming home until next month." That was what she had to say? Not an apology, not an explanation, just an excuse, as if the only mistake was that he had come home too soon. A slow, burning rage began to rise in Ryan's chest, clashing with the deep, unbearable ache spreading through him. His hands clenched into fists, his nails digging into his palms. He had faced enemies on the battlefield, seen the worst of humanity, but nothing had ever felt like this. Jason swallowed hard, running a hand through his hair. "Ryan, man, Don't." Ryan cut him off, his voice hoarse, barely controlled. "Don't you dare say a word." Jason shut his mouth, shame clouding his face. Ryan's gaze snapped back to Emily. "How long?" he demanded, his voice shaking. Tears welled up in her eyes. "Ryan, please, How long, Emily?" he roared, the dam of emotions finally breaking. Emily flinched, her lip trembling. "A few months," she admitted, barely audible. Ryan let out a bitter laugh, his chest heaving. "A few months," he repeated, the words tasting like poison. His world, his marriage, his trust, his friendship, had all been a lie. The weight of the betrayal crushed him, suffocating him. He had dreamed of this homecoming, of holding Emily in his arms, of feeling the warmth of her love again. Instead, he had walked into a nightmare. And he had no idea what to do next. Silence filled the room, heavy and suffocating. The only sound was Ryan's uneven breathing, his chest rising and falling as he fought to keep control. His mind screamed for him to do something, anything, but he felt paralyzed between rage and heartbreak. Emily was the first to move. She scrambled out of bed, clutching the sheet around her body as if it could shield her from the reality of what she had done. Tears streamed down her face, her eyes pleading. "Ryan, please," she choked out. "I never wanted you to find out like this." A sharp, bitter laugh escaped him. "Oh, so that's the problem? That I found out? Not that you did this in the first place?" Emily flinched. I didn't mean for this to happen. I was lonely, Ryan. You were gone for so long, and And what?" he snapped, stepping forward. "I was out there risking my life for us, Emily. For you, and you were here with him?" His voice cracked on the last word, and he hated how broken he sounded. He hated that no matter how much anger filled him, the pain was stronger. Jason finally spoke, his voice low and filled with guilt. "Ryan, man, I messed up. I know I did. I don't have an excuse." Ryan turned on him, his blood boiling. "You don't have an excuse?" He let out a sharp breath, shaking his head. "You were my best friend, Jason, my brother, and this is what you do to me." Jason lowered his head, shame darkening his face. "It wasn't supposed to happen. We didn't plan it, I swear." Ryan clenched his fists, his body shaking. "You didn't plan it? Oh, well, that makes it fine, right?" His voice dripped with venom. "Tell me, Jason, how many times did you not plan to betray me? How many nights did you lie to my face while sneaking around with my wife?" Jason had no answer. He simply looked away. Emily sobbed, taking a step closer. "Ryan, please, I love you. I never stopped loving you." Ryan's heart twisted painfully. He wanted to believe her. God, he wanted to believe that somewhere in all of this, there was still something real between them. But how could he? He looked at her tear-streaked face, at the woman he had once trusted with everything, and realized something. Whatever love they had, it was already gone. Ryan took a slow step back, his voice eerily calm. "I can't do this," he muttered. Emily's face crumpled. "Ryan, wait." But he didn't. He turned, walked out of the bedroom, and left them both standing in the wreckage they had created. The question now was, what came next? Ryan walked through the house in a daze, his mind barely registering his own movements. His body felt heavy, as if every step was pulling him deeper into an abyss he couldn't escape. The home he had dreamed of returning to, the place he had clung to for hope during the darkest nights overseas, felt foreign now. He reached the front door, his hand trembling as he grasped the handle. "Ryan, please." Emily's voice came from behind him, desperate and broken. He stopped, but he didn't turn around. "I made a mistake," she sobbed. "A terrible mistake. But I love you. I love you more than anything. Please, don't just walk away." Ryan squeezed his eyes shut, trying to block out the overwhelming flood of memories that threatened to consume him. The first time he met Emily, it felt like it had been a lifetime ago, but the memory was still as vivid as if it had just happened. Her laughter, so genuine and carefree, echoing through the air as he made the worst joke he could think of. She had laughed so hard, as though it was the funniest thing she'd ever heard, and in that moment, Ryan knew something had shifted inside him. She had always seen him in ways no one else did, like he was someone worth loving. The memory of the proposal came next, unbidden but impossible to forget. They had been sitting under a sky full of stars, surrounded by the quiet beauty of the night. He had taken her hand, trembling not from fear, but from excitement, as he promised to spend the rest of his life with her. When she cried happy tears, her eyes glistening in the moonlight, Ryan had known that this was the woman he would spend his life with. She had vowed to stand by him, through everything, through the long deployments, through the distance, through the toughest moments life would throw at them. And then there were the letters, the ones she had sent him while he was deployed, the ones filled with promises that now felt like cruel jokes. Promises of forever. Words that had been meant to reassure him, to remind him of her love while he was away. He had read those letters over and over again in the quiet of his bunk, clutching them close like a lifeline. Each one was filled with declarations of love, of faithfulness. She would write about how much she missed him, how she couldn't wait for him to come home. Each letter made him feel like he was still a part of her, like there was something solid waiting for him on the other side of the world. He had believed her, with all his heart. He had believed she was waiting for him, that she loved him as much as he loved her. But now, as he stood in the doorway, the truth hit him harder than any explosion he had ever faced on the battlefield. It had all been a lie. Ryan opened his eyes, feeling the weight of those words sink in, his stomach twisting in knots. He turned his head slightly, his gaze drifting to where Emily stood. She was still there, frozen in place, wrapped in the bedsheet as though it could somehow protect her from the reality of what she had done. Her face was streaked with tears, but Ryan couldn't find it in himself to feel sorry for her anymore. He had loved her, he had trusted her, more than he ever thought was possible. And now, she was just another broken promise in his life. His jaw tightened, every muscle in his body stiffening with the need to just walk away. Because no matter how much he wished it could be different, the truth was clear. The woman he had loved was gone. And with her, so was everything he thought they had built. "I would have done anything for you, Emily," Ryan said, his voice barely more than a whisper. Each word felt like a heavy stone sinking to the bottom of his chest. His heart, which had once swelled with love for her, now ached with betrayal. "I fought for us, I held on to us, and you threw it all away." His words hung in the air between them, thick with the weight of everything they had been and everything they had lost. The anger in his voice was drowned by the heartbreak, but there was no mistaking the pain in every syllable. Emily stepped forward, her hands shaking as she reached for him. "Ryan, please," she choked out, her eyes wide with desperation. "I swear it didn't mean anything. It was a mistake." Ryan's eyes locked onto hers, and for a moment he saw the woman he had loved so deeply. But that woman was gone. The face before him was someone unrecognizable, someone who had betrayed him in the worst possible way. "No," his voice cut through the silence, sharp and unwavering. "It wasn't a mistake. A mistake is forgetting an anniversary. A mistake is saying something you don't mean in an argument. This was a choice, over and over again." The truth in his words shattered what little control Emily had left. She collapsed to the floor, her sobs ragged and broken. Her hands covered her face, but it didn't matter. The guilt was written all over her. Every tear she shed was a reflection of a mistake that couldn't be undone. Ryan stood still, his chest tightening as he watched her break down. Part of him wanted to reach out, to hold her, to try to fix it, but he knew better. The woman who had promised to stand by him in the darkest times was no longer there. All that was left was someone who had chosen another man over him. He had nothing left to give her. His heart was empty, his soul was empty, and he couldn't let her take more from him. Ryan turned slowly, feeling the weight of his decision as he reached for the door. His hand trembled, but not from fear. He had come to a painful conclusion. This was the end. The cold air outside hit him like a slap, but it was nothing compared to the emptiness that consumed him inside. The night was quiet, the stars distant and indifferent, much like the life he now faced. Behind him, Emily cried his name, her voice cracking, desperate. But Ryan didn't turn back. He couldn't. It was too late, but he never looked back. Weeks passed, but the pain remained. It wasn't as sharp as that first night, when Ryan had walked out of the house and out of Emily's life. No, now it was something duller, deeper, an ache that lived inside him, woven into his very being. Emily had tried to reach out. Calls, texts, even letters left at his door. Each one filled with apologies, desperate pleas for another chance, but Ryan never responded. There was nothing left to say. At first, the silence had been unbearable. Nights stretched long and empty, haunted by memories of what once was. He found himself staring at his wedding ring, running his thumb over the metal, as if searching for answers in something that had lost all meaning. But slowly, he learned to let go. At first, it was impossible. The memories clung to him like a weight he couldn't shake off. He would wake up expecting to hear Emily's soft breathing beside him, only to be met with the deafening silence of an empty bed. Every little thing reminded him of her. The scent of fresh coffee in the morning, the old sweater she used to steal from his side of the closet, even the way the house felt colder without her in it. The loneliness was suffocating. But he refused to drown in it. So, he threw himself into work, taking on longer shifts, volunteering for the toughest assignments, anything to keep his mind occupied. The exhaustion was a relief. It kept him from thinking too much, from feeling too much. His colleagues noticed the change in him, the quiet intensity in his eyes, but no one asked questions. Maybe they knew better. Maybe they understood that some battles had to be fought alone. Then he started running again. At first, it was just a way to clear his head, to push through the tangled mess of emotions inside him. But with every mile, he felt a little lighter, a little stronger. His muscles ached, his lungs burned, but it was a pain he welcomed. It was a pain he could control. Unlike the betrayal, unlike the memories, this pain had a purpose. He reconnected with old friends, the ones he had drifted away from while he was too busy building a future with Emily. They welcomed him back without hesitation, filling his life with laughter and conversation that didn't revolve around heartbreak. They didn't push him to talk about what had happened, but they reminded him, in their own quiet way, that he was still Ryan. Not the broken man Emily had left behind, but someone whole, someone capable of moving forward. And then, one morning, something changed. Ryan woke up, stretched his arms, and stared at the ceiling. And he realized he hadn't thought about Emily at all. The weight that had sat so heavily on his chest for weeks felt a little lighter. The ghosts of the past that had haunted his every step were finally beginning to fade. The pain hadn't disappeared entirely. It probably never would. Some betrayals cut too deep, leaving behind scars that time could never erase. But scars weren't signs of weakness, they were proof of survival. They were reminders of battles fought and overcome. Ryan had survived, and as he stood on the edge of a new beginning, he knew one thing for certain. He would never let this define him. He was more than his heartbreak. He was moving on. If you enjoyed this story and want to see more emotional journeys like this, don't forget to hit that subscribe button. Your support helps us create more content just for you. Also, if this story moved you, give it a like, share it with your friends, and leave a comment down below, letting us know what you think. We'd love to hear your thoughts and keep the conversation going. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next one.